Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name's Joanna Smith and I'm the head of department. Oh gosh, photograph as well. How terrifying. Head of Department of Management. And the programmes, the academic programmes that your apprentices study are based within my department. That's why I'm here today. I'm just literally here to say hello, welcome, and most of all, thank you. Thank you for taking time out this afternoon. I know how busy, I guess, your schedules are for anything like mine. And you know, to commit an hour to this is important, but also much appreciated, and we hope it will be a valuable use of your time. There's lots to cover, which I won't be covering, but you're in the hands of very capable experts. I did just want to reflect on the fact that in my casual TV viewing, there was a bit of Bake Off yesterday and probably various other things. I caught adverts over the last few days for apprenticeships. McDonald's, Amazon, many of the big employers are running apprenticeships, and they are very much becoming a very credible option for school leavers at 16, for school leavers at 18, which is of course of particular interest for us in a university setting, but also for adult learners of more mature years, shall we say. It's an important thing that we're doing. It's a curious and interesting thing because of the funding behind apprentices and apprenticeships, whether you're a levy payer or not. And of course, coupled with anything that has government initiative and backing behind it, indeed compulsion in some cases, it comes with some bureaucracy, some regulation, and various tick boxes that we know can be sometimes challenging to navigate. They're challenging for us to navigate as well. So part of the session today is to help support you through the processes that you as employers and employers of apprentices need to sort of follow and adhere to, but also to explain to you what we do in the university, how we resource and support you. And I can reassure you we're very committed to that resource and that support. And also ultimately what we jointly, this is very much a collaborative effort, what we jointly deliver to the apprentices, who in the end, of course, are the most important people as part of this partnership and this arrangement. So I hope you have a great afternoon. I will stop there because there's lots to get through, and we'll run out of time if I keep on talking, and wish you a great afternoon.
Thank you, Joanna. So yes, welcome everybody, and I'm much appreciated that you sort of found time in your sort of busy schedules to attend. It is quite a key. We run these a couple of times a year. It's our second one this year, and in total actually since we started this. So yes, so welcome. Very shortly, this is the agenda for today. We're just going to very shortly go through the team and introduce you to the team in case you're not aware of who they are, put a name to a face, so to speak. Once we've done initial sort of introductions, then we'll go into really the main reason why we're here, which is around the employer confidence readiness tool, and to be able to sort of understand, you know, your sort of level of knowledge around this. And please, this is very much a collaborative sort of process here, trying to sort of support, but in terms of us, the provider supporting the employer, getting your knowledge as to where it needs to be, if that's the case. And then at the end, we've got an opportunity for some Q&A. So if there's any sort of questions that you may have about the actual tool or anything else at all, then hopefully between myself and my sort of colleagues here, we'll be able to sort of answer those for you. So without further ado, so I'm going to hand over to Alex just to introduce the academic team, and then I'll carry on with the professional services after that. So Alex, over to you.
Hi there everyone, good afternoon, and thanks for being here with us. My name's Alex Altersky. I'm the Joint Programme Leader of the Chartered Manager Degree Apprenticeship, and that is the Level 6 degree apprenticeship. Unfortunately, Karen Burrows, my colleague, who's the other Joint Programme Leader, she couldn't be with us for this session as she's teaching at this time. And then my other colleague, Tracy White, she is the actual leader of the Senior Leadership Management Degree Apprenticeship. And Tracy actually wrote the degrees around all of these as well. So I'm representing my academic colleagues today. Yeah, over to you, Taz.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So some of you will know me, hopefully most of you, in terms of I'm Tarzan Shoker. I'm the key account manager for degree apprenticeships. And my sort of real aim is to sort of help improve engagement amongst from us as a provider and in between yourself as employers there. And this is one event as is a good example of this there. So as part of my role, sort of I do regular sort of health checks, which I like to call them, where we sort of meet up and discuss all things apprenticeships, whether it's sort of the next recruitment cycle, apprentices sort of progress, or any sort of opportunities that we may have, sort of coming for you in the near sort of future there. So as part of the sort of professional services team, we have Anna. Fortunately, she's not with us due to illness, unfortunately, today. Otherwise, she would have been here to introduce herself. But Anna leads the administration team to be able to support employers in terms of the over the life of the apprenticeship journey there itself. And we also have Emily Burrows, who's the Senior Administrator for Business Development. Emily, if you want to say a few words yourself.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. It's lovely to be with you all. So I'm the Senior Administrator within the Business Development team. So I support TARS with the sort of employer engagement, for example, like the employer reports that we do. So yeah, thank you so much for being here with us.
Right, thank you, Emily. And then I'm going to hand you over to Patrick and Helen, actually. So Patrick and Helen are from our Central University team. Patrick, if you want to say a few words about yourself and your role.
Yeah, thanks, Taz, and welcome everybody this afternoon. I'm Patrick Leonard. I'm the Higher and Degree Apprenticeship Manager, which is a bit of a misnomer because it's all apprenticeships basically. So essentially, I overview the apprenticeships from beginning to end, the data, the funding, the quality, the Ofsted, all of that side of things. And I am ably supported by Helen, who's also in my team. So there's a team of 2 of us in the centre who take on this role. So I'll pass on to Helen to introduce herself.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Patrick. Yes, so that we're a team of 2, and I have the wonderful title Degree Apprenticeships Project Officer, which doesn't tell you anything at all, really. But my particular focus, all those things that Patrick said, but my particular focus really is on compliance with the ESFA funding rules. So I tend to be the villain of the piece sometimes, I think. But obviously, I think as Taz referred to, or Joanne referred to, everything that's done by government funding comes with a whole lot of bureaucracy. So that tends to be my focus. But yes, a broad remit, supporting and advising the team within LIBS. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Helen. Fantastic. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to sort of move on to the main discussion, if you like. So the employer confidence and readiness tool. So what is it? So this tool was actually sort of developed by a consortium of Kent-based providers who came together under the banner of the Kent Association of Training Organisations. And the project is or has been really an early exploration of how sort of providers can facilitate effective engagement and participation with employers during the initial assessment there. And really the aim of this is to develop outstanding practice. So this is very much a collaborative approach. And as you can see by the model there, in terms of a review, feedback, a development stage, evaluation stage, this is done together collaboratively, employer, provider, to make sure that the knowledge and the gaps in knowledge are sort of reduced to be able to ensure that a positive apprentice journey is the end result, basically. So and this also actually helps to embed the tripartite relationship and helps us work closer together there. So why do we need to do this? There's meaningful dialogue by going through the sort of series of questions, which is part of the tool. It helps us sort of understand, a bit more deeply in terms of what the requirements are and what the commitments are. It's comprehensive and it's robust. It ensures a positive apprentice journey, as I just mentioned there. and a clear understanding of the commitment on all parts there. And the commitment is a tripart commitment there. So in terms of the apprentice, the provider, and the employer there. So we sort of fully understanding of what that is there. And as I just mentioned, bridging that sort of knowledge gap is absolutely key. And I mean, if you're fully up to speed on things, that's fantastic. If there is gaps there, then we're there to be able to sort of support you, to be able to sort of help improve on that knowledge there. And of course, this is fully sort of compliant with both the sort of the funding, both funding IFA, ESFA and Ofsted requirements. So how is this delivered? So initially, I would sort of arrange to set up a meeting with yourselves, and prior to that sort of meeting, I will give you visibility of what those questions are, so you can be able to sort of really self-assess and look at those gaps that you may have yourself. So rather than just maybe go through all the questions, because you may be pretty strong on say 90% of what's there, but if you identify the areas that maybe you need a bit more support on, or in that sense, we can focus in on that during the actual meeting itself, so making the whole process more efficient as well. And of course, absolutely, as I said, just in supporting yourselves with that sort of missing knowledge. And then there's a review process as well, and depending where you are. So the CRAG is C is sort of competent, fully competent, and the RAG is the traditional RAG rating, red, amber, green. So if you are sort of a C or a G, then you're going to probably require very little sort of support from us. But if you are sort of, if you think you're more in the R, red and the amber, then that's where we can sort of step in and sort of help you and support you in a collaborative way there. So, and before we actually kick into the sort of the meat of the actual tool itself, I just wanted to run a very quick sort of poll, if you like, and it's completely anonymous, and all it does is it assesses for yourself really in terms of where you are, and then what you can do at the end, by the time we sort of finish the presentation, you can sort of basically self-evaluate and review yourself as to whether you think what you initially put down is still the same or not there. So if you go to your browser, whether it's on your mobile, laptop or desktop there, and just punch in slido.com, you should then come up with, it will ask you to sort of enter a code, and you can enter the 567 789, and yeah, and that will sort of give you there. So that's purely, as I said, it's completely anonymous, and yeah, you can be able to then review and self-assess yourselves there. So it looks like most people are satisfactory, might need a little bit of help there. We got people who are fully competent there, and some people who need a bit more help, and that's absolutely normal in that sense, because we get a range of employers who are sort of more experienced, very much sort of been doing it for many years, and have a large team behind them, right the way down to where we get employers where there's often sort of one person wearing lots of different hats as well, and equally they tend to be also very much clued in there as well. So so that's changing as we sort of speak at the moment there, but it looks like it's the same ranking there in that sense there. But yeah, thank you for that. Right, I'm going to hand over to Alex at this stage, and he's going to talk to you about some of the areas on the actual tool itself. Over to you, Alex.
Thanks, Tars. Yeah, I mean, the sort of importance and crux of what we're talking about today in this employer confidence and readiness tool is that we, as the university, the provider, we want to work closely with you, the employers, to ensure, because in effect, we are sort of joint delivering the apprenticeships, if that makes sense. We are delivering some of the learning and delivering those things, but then the apprentices are actually building their skills, building their knowledge and all of these things in the workplace. So it's very important that we're all sort of working in the same direction. We've all got a good understanding of the apprenticeship. We've all got a good understanding of what the apprentices are doing, what the end sort of goal for the apprentices are. And really, so this tool is great because because Tars or Emily can have these meetings with you and really sort of see where you are and see where maybe some more understanding needs to be developed or anything in interventions, if that makes sense. So in terms of the actual tool itself, one of the things that we're going to be asking and focusing on is whether you have a knowledge and understanding of the apprenticeship standard and the assessment plan for the standard. So in terms of the apprenticeships, whether it be the CMDA or the SLNDA, there is something called an apprenticeship standard. And this is basically a number of different sort of topic areas that form knowledge, skills and behaviours. That it's said that by the end of the apprenticeship, the apprentice should be able to show evidence that they have developed the knowledge, they have shown the skills linked to this, and they have actually got evidence of the behaviours linked to these things. So what we do at the beginning of an apprenticeship, or even before the apprenticeship starts, is we get the apprentices to do a skills scan where they actually look and see where they are linked to the apprenticeship standard. And this skills scan, they actually rate themselves sort of on a Likert scale around all these knowledge, skills and behaviours. So if we took the CMDA, some of the areas, for instance, we've got a project management area, we've got a finance area, we've got a stakeholder management area, we've got a marketing area. And the apprentices will have looked at different statements linked to this and they will have rated themselves. Now, this is the first time that really in the whole of the journey that the employer and the apprentice will have seen the standard, but already there'll be some knowledge of this standard. Then what's going to happen across the journey of the apprenticeship is that the apprentice is going to be working on those areas and amassing the knowledge, skills and behaviours. So it's really important that both ourselves as the university and provider, the apprentice themselves, of course, and the employer all have a good understanding of what's in this standard and what are the things that they need to achieve in terms of showing the knowledge, skills and behaviours over the length of the apprenticeship. For example, if we take in the CMDA, if we take the finance part of the standard, within that, they need to show evidence that they are managing a budget. So obviously we can teach that to the apprentice in the university through the finance module, but also the apprentice needs to work with their employer, their work-based mentor, and they maybe need to be given control of a budget if they haven't already, or they need to do some work shadowing, or they need a work-based project around that. So if we all have a good understanding of the standard, then we can work together as a tripartite to make sure those learning opportunities are happening in the workplace and at the university. Equally linked to this, the assessment plan for the standard. So this is basically how the apprentice is going to be assessed and at the end of the apprenticeship. And it's important we all have a good understanding of that. So if we take the CMDA, the apprentices have to have a full portfolio of evidence that they've achieved the knowledge, skills and behaviours. They need to do a work-based project and do a work-based project report. They need to do a work-based project presentation. They need to have a personal development plan, the CPD log. And it's important that we all have an understanding of that, because that's something we're going to be looking at building on all the way through the apprenticeship, and then they're going to be assessed endpoint assessment on it at the end. Next slide, please, Tars. So endpoint assessment criteria and process requirements. Sorry, I jumped ahead of myself slightly. So endpoint assessment is how the apprentices are assessed at the end of the apprenticeship. And they're assessed by an endpoint assessment organisation. For the case of our two apprenticeships, it's the Chartered Management Institute, the CMI. So firstly, we need to make sure that our apprentices are aware that that's what they need to do. So, at the beginning of the CMDA, the apprentices are told you've got this big work-based project at the end, start thinking about it, start talking to your employers about what it could be. And then we do sessions and reminders throughout the apprenticeship. We need to make sure that they've got a good understanding, but also because this work-based project, it must be negotiated with the employer so that the employer is on board with it. We need to ensure that the employer has a good understanding. In terms of the process requirements, Then we have the process for actually getting to endpoint assessment. The apprentices will get to what's called gateway, where they've achieved the degree, they've got the full portfolio, they've got the work-based project report, they've got the work-based project presentation ready to present. And then we will let the CMI know. The CMI take about 4 weeks to look at all of this. And then there is an endpoint assessment day, which is a roughly two-hour exam, but it's actually a verbal exam. So basically the apprentice will do a 15-minute presentation. There'll be 3 questions around that, and then there'll be 6 questions around their portfolio. And we need to make sure that everybody understands that, the employer as well, so that they're totally ready for that. So when we recruit an apprentice, we're actually recruiting the employer as well, actually, because as I've just sort of said, and without risking sort of sounding like a broken record, the employer is a really important sort of stakeholder in making this apprenticeship work and be successful. So really what we have to do is we induct our apprentices, and, you know, we do sort of a 2-day induction, but we also have to induct our employers, and we need to, through the work that we do with the work-based mentors, we do an induction session. In fact, I did one last week online for the CMDA, and then with the work that Tars and Emily does with the sort of partnership level employer colleagues, learning and development leads, that we make sure that everybody's got a good understanding of what's involved in the apprenticeship and what's happening. So although it's important, you know, the apprentices are the ones we spend the most time with, you know, it's important that we have that relationship with the employer from the start, that we induct the employer and the employer's got a good idea of what's happening in the apprenticeship.
Right, thank you, Alex. Right, I'm just going to move over to myself now. So I'm going to cover three sort of key areas here in terms of staff roles required to sort of support, mentor and manage training of apprentices. We're going to have a look at sort of the knowledge required and the competence to support an apprentice, and also how it's linked to existing sort of performance management systems there. So looking at the first one then, it's really important that, you know, as an employer, you're able to identify a suitable staff member to mentor. You know, and the question is, you know, I'm sure you'll probably ask yourself, are they the most appropriate person to be mentoring that particular apprentice there? You know, the sort of things we look for, you know, in a mentor is, you know, all we're asked is, do they have the right skills and experience? And so much so that you may even have those sort of skills and experiences actually embedded within their job specification to sort of help with that sort of support as well. Having the right mentor in place is absolutely key for the right support, and more importantly, how to mentor. Knowing how to coach and mentor is absolutely essential for all parties, and making sure that the apprentice does get that sort of ideal support, you know, from an employer's perspective. On the other side of the fence, in terms of the provider, that's us, you know, they'll have the portfolio support tutor who will be sort of also providing support from one end, and they'll be getting the support from the workplace in terms of the mentor there. So again, that is the ideal sort of scenario, and hence why it's so important to make sure that that mentor has the right skills in place. Now, good practice is about identifying any maybe potential CPD requirements for mentors before they actually start working with apprentices there, to be able to have a look at that. I mean, even the mentor needs supporting, you know. So when we appoint a mentor, it's not really, it's not necessarily they're sort of come out ready-made as such. They do also potentially may need some development in that sense as well. So supporting the mentor is important, and they must identify, you know, the mentor must identify how they would actually support the apprentice as well. So having a little bit of a plan so that it makes it easy for the apprentice to be able to sort of know where they're going to and how they can access that sort of support there. And I guess the mentor, is there to sort of help devise that sort of strategy plan, and to be able to make it clear as to what that support will look like there. And of course, because we're also sort of reliant on sort of meeting the requirements around sort of Ofsted and ESFA, etc. There's always that evidence element that needs to be there. So, how do we sort of illustrate this, evidence this ultimately? And the employer can do this by, having sort of meetings and maybe minuting those meetings and sort of drawing out those actions, and ultimately sort of keeping in touch with the mentor throughout that sort of process there. The second part of this is around sort of the mentor having sufficient knowledge and competence to support the actual apprentice there. And again, you must be confident that the mentor is in the appropriate role, with sufficient knowledge and experience to be able to support that mentor there. Has the actual mentor received an induction? So that's something that you could ask yourself if that's appropriate in that situation. And we need to give mentors the time to mentor. Often, we maybe put the responsibility of mentoring somebody or appointing somebody as a mentor, but it's on top of their day job, basically, and trying to sort of make a little bit of space to be able to do that is quite important. And then also at the same time, recognizing it, motivating them, appreciating it, all helps to sort of going a long way towards that sort of extra additional task, I guess, as some potentially may see it as well. So here's a sort of few sort of points that we look out for when we're as mentors, and something an employer to sort of take on board. So employers must be sort of enthusiastic about the role. The mentors must be the best fit for the actual apprentice that they're going to be mentoring. Mentors value learning. We know they value lifelong learning, and you know what? It's okay to be an expert and not know the answer, as long as they know how to find it, or they'll go and find out there. So it's about sharing the knowledge and also willing to learn from a mentee. Because sometimes we could be mentoring somebody who's also in a senior position, and so sometimes it is about learning from each other, and that's just as valuable as opposed to it being just a one-way sort of process there. Mentors should encourage you to step out of your comfort zone, be active listeners, know how to provide feedback, be respectful in terms of each other, and I mentioned being sort of expert. So being experts in their field is really important there. And I mentioned sort of mentor development. They do need development and support, and this is where this development should be linked to sort of the organisation's performance management and their training and development plan. So talking about sort of performance management there. So the question is, does your sort of current performance management system work positively to support the mentor? That's the question, and something for you to sort of consider there, because again, that is key and very helpful in terms of making sure the mentor is a success at what they're doing. The mentor sort of leading the reviews, they must have a sort of a good working knowledge of the standard. And as Alex sort of mentioned regarding the induction, as much as there's an induction for the apprentice, there's an induction for the mentor as well when we start a new cohort there. So that's another ideal opportunity to be able to sort of embed themselves and understand the standard there as well. And these standards, these areas could be aligned to the standard either through things like the inductions, orientation, job descriptions, appraisals in one-to-one meetings, part of the review process, and training and development plans there. So having those sort of linked up positively, I think would be a good thing to help sort of support the mentor, who can then in turn support the apprentice in the way that we need them to as well. Right, I am now going to hand over to Patrick and Helen to go through the next section of the tool. Over to you, Patrick and Helen.
Hi, do you want me to pick this up? I think I was going to take the first slide. Can somebody move the slide on for me, please? Yes, so we've just taken this over from Anna, who was due to speak to it this morning, but is off sick today, rather, not this morning, this afternoon. So I thought I would pick it up. So one of the questions is, the employer is aware of the induction and initial assessment activities and gaps. I think the gaps refers to if there were any gaps in what's just gone before, so I'll ignore the word gaps. But really, this is, I told you I was a compliance bod, didn't I? So you're going to suffer. So what in an apprenticeship that we as a provider must do and agree in this tripartite relationship is that that both we and you as an employer are satisfied that the apprenticeship is actually the most appropriate learning programme for your employee, and that we can have evidence that it's either a new job that they're doing that requires them to gain significant new skills and knowledge and behaviour, or it's an existing job role that requires significant new skills, knowledge and behaviour. And so we're supposed to be able to evidence that, which means that these activities that take place taking somebody onto an apprenticeship are quite in depth. And it's quite clear from the funding rules, and there are rules for employers as well as main providers which reflect each other, and it's quite clear that we're not expected to use apprenticeship funds to accredit either learning or experience that employees already have. So there is quite a lot of work to do before the apprenticeship can, we can actually say an apprentice can start on doing a robust initial assessment of their prior learning, their experience, everything they've done. Now, a lot of that is done with the academics who will make judgments on whether, what they did 10 years ago in relation to a chartered managed degree, is different or the same from the sort of current level of experience they would need. So there is a lot of activity around there. And Alex has already mentioned skills scans, and that's another tool that we use, but it's only one tool that looks at the alignment of the current job role and the sort of self-assessment of competency against those knowledge, skills and behaviours. So that all takes place in the beginning of the, before we can even accept somebody onto an apprenticeship. And I'm not entirely sure of how LIBS does it, but I think they have interviews with employers and apprentices, and with the academics as well. So there is a really robust process that takes place before we can actually say, yes, this person can progress to an apprenticeship. So I think, if there is significant prior learning or experience, then we can use the process of accrediting that prior learning, which would probably mean a reduced funding rate for the apprenticeship as well. So I think the next slide is about the commitment statement. So just if we can move that on, right, okay. So tripartite, we've heard that, Tars has mentioned it, Alex has mentioned it. The apprenticeship is as much the employers as it is the apprentices. Can't emphasise that enough, really. And the commitment statement is a document that we're required to have where the employer and the apprentice and us as provider say how we're going to plan out what happens during the apprenticeship. So it'll have things like the timescales for the various elements, including endpoint assessment, which is what Alex referred to earlier. So all those sort of timescales, as well as, the employer will do this and the learner will do this type of things, which is, give the 20% off the jobs. I've not heard that mentioned. That's probably coming up soon. That it's a legal requirement for an employer to give the apprentice 20% of their normal working hours as off-the-job training, doing activities that are eligible for off-the-job training. And I think that is coming up in one of the future slides, isn't it? So I won't labour that point. But it's about, there are various things that we're required to put in this, like if an apprentice wants to make a complaint or an employer wants to make a complaint, and that's a requirement by the funding rules that we put those certain things into our commitment statement. So it's it's signed by the employer, it's signed by the apprentice, and it's signed by us as a provider, and it's meant to be a subject of continual update, in line with when reviews take place and that kind of thing. So I think, Patrick, I'm going to hand over you now to talk about monitoring progress as they go through, as an apprentice goes through, if that's all right.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm just following on really from what Alex has said and what Helen has said, really. It's about this kind of relationship and collaboration and communication, really, between the apprentice, the employer, and ourselves, really, and to know where we're up to. So we know the starting point, we've done a skills scan, we know what knowledge, skills and behaviours people think they have already. We've assessed that against the level, whether it be level 6 or level 7. And from that, we've developed a curriculum which meets the needs of each of the apprentices. During that time, then, from the start to when they reach endpoint assessment, we should be monitoring their progress. And that's not just the progress with their academic qualification. That primarily for us, for the apprenticeship, is what we keep calling the knowledge, skills and behaviours, or the KSBs, which are attributed by the apprenticeship standard. So within the apprenticeship standard, I'll have a list of knowledge, I'll have a list of skills, I'll have a list of behaviours, which are required for this career. So we know which ones we started with, we know which ones we need, which is all of them. By the end we reach the endpoint assessment. What we need to ensure is that we know after 6 months, after a year, after 18 months, how many of these knowledge, skills and behaviours do we feel confident with? Has the apprentice gained as many as we thought they would, as we hoped they would by after 12 months, after 18 months? And if they haven't, is there something we need to do either on the 20% when they're with us, with the university, and we're guiding them, or in the 80% when they're in the workplace? Is there something that needs to be done there, some opportunities needed to be given to them in order to gain those knowledge, skills and behaviours? Now, some of them, including the behaviours, really are very much down to the mentor within the workplace would be able to identify whether this apprentice is exhibiting these behaviours and would be able to guide the apprentice to opportunities to gain these skills and behaviours as well in the workplace. So this should come out in our 12 weekly or 10 weekly, or how often we are having the reviews with you. We'll be identifying where we think the apprentice should be up to, and where we believe they're up to. But this is, again, a conversation really with the employer, the apprentice and ourselves. We're all on the same page, so we all understand where we're up to and what needs to be done before we have our next review. So it's not a matter of the tutor's responsibility, it's not a matter of the apprentice's responsibility, it's not a matter of it being you as the employer's responsibility, it's everybody's responsibility, and we all need to be working together and communicating effectively to make that happen. And the evidence for that would either be in the one file, it would be in the reviews, it would be in the communications that we're having with each other, and within the kind of the planning forward, if you like, of how we're going to cover the knowledge, skills and behaviours. And also the employer has the responsibility of signing off that the apprentice is ready for their endpoint assessment. So you'd have a form to fill in to say, yes, I think they are ready, they have all the knowledge, skills and behaviours. So there is quite a bit of an onerous responsibility really on the employer to monitor the progress of each of their apprentices. And that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Emily, I think it's you next, yes.
Thanks, Taz. So just looking at the understanding the commitment to meet the 20% off the job training requirement. So firstly, looking at what is the 20%. So part of the apprenticeship commitment is that the employer must allow the apprentice 20% of their working time. So whatever that looks like, even if they're part-time, this will be pro rata. So this has to be given to the apprentice to do their off the job. And it's any training undertaken away from the apprentice's immediate work position. Also, if you have any questions, we do have a question and answer at the end of the slides, and we can pick these points up at that point in the agenda if you have any questions. So there are a number of things that the apprentice can do within that 20% off the job. That's just, on the slide here. For example, such as attending talk sessions on campus, or attending conferences, or maybe any industry visits. As part of the employer reports that we generate, we ensure that you're not only aware of the type of activities that the employer does for the 20%, but that they are definitely allowed to get that time off from work. The employer should definitely be aware of that time and know how to put that time to good use. And the apprentice should embed that in conjunction or in collaboration with their line manager to make sure that that is part of the overall plan. The 20% off the job is recorded on one file, and from that we are able to produce the reports I mentioned for each of our employers, for each apprentice. All employers should also have access to one file for the work-based mentors to be able to keep tabs on the apprentices 20%. So if you don't have that access, please get in touch with us and we can provide that for you. The work-based mentors should be discussing that about the 20% in the quarterly report meeting with the portfolio support tutor and the apprentice there. We have a calculator in order for us to work out the 20% in terms of the number of days and hours, and we can go into a little bit more depth on those calculations in our one-to-one meetings with each employer. And that information will be used at the beginning to sort of create their individual learning plans. And once their 20% has been worked out, then we can look at what part of the training plan that can fit into and what that looks like in terms of the commitment statement and ensuring that there is definitely that commitment to the 20% there. Also, just sort of touching a little bit on what is learned in the 20%. This has been mentioned throughout this presentation, but the knowledge, skills and behaviours that the apprentice is trying to improve on from a work perspective, which are identified as gaps in the skills scan at the initial application stage, which Alex and Helen discussed earlier. So those will be targeted as part of their 20%. So it's not necessarily the areas that they're experts on, but more so the gaps which have been previously identified in the skills scan. Moving on, just having a look at the apprenticeship and the job spec and how that reflects the behaviours, knowledge and skills needed for the standard. The 20% should be utilised to improve on those areas identified in the skills scan. Whilst the apprentice has got the job, it may be that the job spec refers to more soft skills, if you like, and the skills scan identifies the areas that aren't as strong. So this could be areas around communication or leadership, for example. For example, if the apprentice wanted to gain better leadership skills, they could lead a team meeting. But this may need specific planning, as it wouldn't be part of their normal role, so it would need to be included in their plan there. This would be any activities assigned to the apprentice which isn't part of their normal job role, but is certainly identified as part of the skills scan, which help grow and improve their knowledge, skills and behaviours. And throughout the apprenticeship as a whole, the apprentices will be required to look into the job spec and start looking at those gaps and working on them. And that should be put into practice as part of their 80% as well in their work. I think that's everything. Thank you. I'll pass you back to Taz.
Great. Thank you very much, Emily. That's fantastic. So that actually brings us to, draws us to a close really on the actual tool itself in terms of the employer confidence and readiness tool there. So I just wanted to really sort of go through a Q&A opportunity now for you to sort of ask any questions. There's probably been a lot of information there for you to be able to sort of absorb and take on board. But so again, if you want to sort of jump on slido.com and then jump into the or input the actual code, sorry, there. And then fire in your questions and we can sort of bring them up onto the actual slide itself if there's any questions there. So I'll just give you a few minutes to sort of maybe sort of input any of your questions if you have any. And whilst maybe you're sort of thinking about some of those questions there, again, it doesn't necessarily, you may have questions around apprenticeships in general. Feel free to sort of field those as well, as we've got sort of our experts on hand in terms of academic and from Central as well. So probably quite a good opportunity there as well. And also I guess it's sort of a great time to maybe sort of think about in terms of the sort of gaps that you may have, and then, you know, if you feel that yes, you're one of those that there is some support required, then feel free to drop myself and Emily an email and we can organise and set up a meeting to be able to sort of go through that and actually run through the tool itself with you. And like I said, when we run through the actual questions, it really does sort of probe the knowledge of apprenticeships, and it's a great way to sort of learn as well. But yeah, so but we'll be able to send that out to you prior, like I said at the beginning, so you can have a look and go through those questions, and we can focus on the ones where you need focusing on. So I haven't sort of had any questions here, so I'm going to take it that there are no questions at the moment. So I guess on that basis, then I will thank everybody for coming along and giving up their time this afternoon. It's very much appreciated. And yeah, and if you have any sort of questions and queries, please sort of contact us direct. I'm just going to move the slide along. Yeah, so for any employee engagement activities, contact myself and Emily. Any sort of administrative queries, you can, whether it's for CMDA or the SLMDA, you can contact those respective or go through those respective email addresses there. And our next briefing is going to be next May. So again, if you have any sort of particular areas that you think would make for a sort of good discussion point for sort of employers, because this is all about sort of imparting knowledge, supporting yourselves in any which way to help sort of improve that apprenticeship journey. I mean, we've just started out. You may have received our sort of quarterly newsletter we just put out last month in October, and we're going to obviously put another one out in January again. So keep an eye out for those, because again, we're looking for any sort of particular content that will be useful and helpful for employers. So if there's anything that you think that may help you in particular, again, please drop us a line and we're happy to sort of include that into either the newsletter or maybe sort of have it as, for our next briefing there. But yeah, so I guess I'll sort of give some time back into your sort of diaries now. And so thank you very much. And thank you for sort of turning up. That's very much appreciated.